Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming to Epic Antique. We really appreciate you stopping by for this wonderful book reading event. This is our first time hosting a session event. I'd like to say a couple of words on behalf of our wonderful authors and colleagues here. They've asked me to read a little statement here. Well, my name's Will Sullivan. I'm manager of both stores, and we just wanted to say thank you all for coming. Thank you for Tom Gores and Jackie Crow and Matthew Colbert. They are the ones that make this all possible. So they're wonderful people, and they're glad to have you here as well. Eric is going to read a chapter from his book, the way that this is going to go, and then Bryn will read two shorter pieces after that. And then there will be a short Q&A session, so get some questions formulated there for that. There's going to be book selling and signing. There's also going to be some champagne, so we're going to pop some bubbly here. And they're going to take cash, PayPal, Venmo, and they're also going to welcome compliments on their good looks today. So just to introduce them briefly, Eric Pitsenberger is a visual artist, a writer, an occasional performer, designer of book covers, blogger for performance venues, ghostwriter for other artists, and an award-winning food server. This is his first book. And Bryn Gribben is a poet and essayist who left academia to explore the world of antiques. Her essay Cabin was nominated for a 2019 Pushcart Prize, and she was a finalist for the 2021 Creative Nonfiction Porch Prize. Most recently, she was a finalist for the Paris-Aroff Prize in Poetry, which she also did not win. But her book, Amplified Heart, an Emotional Discography, is also a first for her. She published it from Other Words Press in 2022. She lives in Seattle with 2 cats and a love song of a partner sitting right there, who she thanks today for running the tech. The cats did nothing and are unsupportive in general. With that, I thank you, and I won't take up any more of your time. Let's give the floor to these wonderful colleagues.
We asked Will to introduce us because he's our favorite. He's 25 years old. Can you believe that?
I refer to Will as my work husband. This is my book, self-published effort, just came out in April. I'll give you a little preamble. I grew up in a family-run French restaurant in a little town called Mendocino, California. We started in 1968. My Bohemian parents decided that we were going to become a restaurant family, and I was subsequently made into an indentured servant. And the story, but it's gone on to become quite the legacy restaurant. It's still in existence. It's on its 4th incarnation and considered the legacy restaurant of the North Coast. My parents began the whole thing, and unbeknownst to them, they were also astronauts in that they started the farm-to-table craze. It's now considered de rigueur for a fine dining restaurant. They'd say, Eric, get out there in the backyard and get some carrots. Go swing a chicken. It's how we did it. I learned a lot about many things. The story I've chosen to read to you it begins the final third of the book, where I've come into my fully disgruntled teenage self, still harboring quite the grudge for having been displaced from glorious Berkeley and shoveled into ghost town Mendocino. And I forgot my reader's copy at home, so I'm just going to grab one of these. That's when I besmirch it.
It actually gains value with the book.
That's right. Especially from the writer.
Right?
Yeah.
Reader Schmitz. High prize.
I was an extra in a horror film that was filmed in Mendocino. This is chapter 23, The Dunwich Horror. In a small town, when a big movie company moved in and wanted to use your home as a backdrop, it was a big deal. A film starring former child actor Dean Stockwell was the event of the year. And suddenly, almost overnight, Mendocino went from a sleepy artist hamlet to a bustling factory town. Trucks and equipment crowded in where only open space used to be. Strange faces and pushy people clogged the grocery, and the cafe was booked every night, with the film crew dropping big bucks for the very best Ellen and Gerald could provide, my two parents. Everywhere I looked was a sign of foreign activity. The picture postcard landscape and tiny streets were clogged with impromptu campgrounds with arc lights, piled cords, and sandbags, people lounging, people smoking in canvas chairs, cameras pointing in every direction. There was no one area where the film centered, as the entire town had become a backlot. The bookstore, the art center, the bluffs, my secret eucalyptus grove. Turn any corner and there they were, casually disrespecting sacred ground. Even walking to school was detoured by roped off signs and guards with walkie-talkies. Yesterday I lived there. There was room to think. But today they were filming, so go away. Even though I knew that it was a boon for the local economy, it nevertheless felt like an invasion. And as I washed their dishes at the Beaujolais, I leveled a curse. Stupid tourists. Based on an old H.P. Lovecraft story, the Dunwich Horror was about occultist shenanigans unleashing a horde of demons and turning the earth into an unrecognizable limbo. As I looked around, this scenario felt oddly familiar. With my life so recently and drastically changed, relocated from comfortable city life to this wide space of the road, with all these bossy people swarming, I once again felt off balance. Was the truth right under my nose, and was my worst suspicion true? Could the calm and serenity of Mendocino all be a charming facade for something darker? Something hideous? All the signs said yes. The slightly decrepit, pickled Victoriana, creepy fog, foreboding weather, endless expanse of ocean, and angry surf crashing against forlorn cliffs. Trees clawing the air, listless citizens wandering as if called by some otherworldly force. Do you remember the opening sequence of Dark Shadows? The atmosphere of repressed angst and violence roiled just under the quaint surface. You couldn't ask for a better place to film the end of the world. I wondered, was Mendocino secretly a doorway to hell, and were the end of days right around the corner? Of course they weren't. But what if it was? With everything going on in the world, the Vietnam War and continuing violent protests, the specter of nuclear annihilation, even the Beatles breaking up, it seemed almost plausible. And the world was crazy. Who knew what could happen? I went even further and asked myself if this movie making was coincidence or somehow impossibly an allegory for actual fact. Were these strangers and this movie company here in town filming a documentary? When the ad showed up in the local paper for extras, I decided that instead of just waiting around grumbling about the apocalypse, I'd get out of the kitchen, face my anxiety, and join the show. I'd go undercover and find out what was really happening. As part of the action, I'd also make a bit of extra money and experience movie making from the trenches. And maybe I'd also expose the terrible truth that Mendocino was evil. And maybe remembering my reading old Hollywood legends, I might also be discovered along the way. Hey, if it happened to Lana Turner, plucked from obscurity, it could certainly happen to me, a teenage kitchen grunt. In my overamped magical thinking, I considered that perhaps by becoming a star, I might also somehow even prevent Armageddon. I needed this job. The world's and my fate might depend upon it. My friends Sean and Annie and I lined up with everybody else and were instantly cast as regular people who'd become the newly possessed. How clever, I thought, since most of us were stoned by 8 a.m. An army of hippy-dippy succubi. On the day of the shoot, I was up before the sun, too excited to sleep and way too early to pick up Sean and Annie, who lived together. I waited in the idling car as they came stumbling out of their house, clutching coffee cups, disheveled and completely complaining that this had been a terrible mistake. Jesus, did you even go to sleep? Sean teased. Remember, we're extras. That means background noise. The chances of us being plucked from obscurity are a factor of -0.0. Sean always found pleasure in dousing cold water on my enthusiasm. Annie chimed in, "They'll probably cut the scene." As I drove out of town, they nestled together in the back seat, half asleep, cranky, until I offered up my alternative take on the possible true purpose of this film, pointing out that we really already lived in a gothic horror movie. That got them chuckling. They could relate, as everything was always up for ridicule. Sarcasm tinged with vague pessimism was a shared language between us. They talked about escaping Mendocino all the time, the second they turned 18. What would I do when they left? Who would I be able to complain about the world with? Halfway there, Sean lit up a fat joint, and responding to my look of surprise, he explained matter-of-factly, "What? We're getting into character." I went ahead and took a couple puffs. What could hurt? We'd been completely stoned when they cast us, so for all they knew, this was completely normal. It was normal, possessed by the demon weed. When we arrived at the graveyard location, I was out of my body with caffeine, adrenaline, and Maui Wowie. I followed Sean and Annie as if watching the three of us from above, hearing the crunch of dirt as we stumbled forward. I concentrated on not tripping over my own 2 feet, now suddenly grown 3 sizes larger, dragging like cinder blocks. We ended up waiting around for what seemed like hours, all of us extras clustered together along the side of the road like cattle, trying to keep warm, pacing back and forth, already completely bored, engaging in uncomfortable chit-chat, waiting for any instruction, for anything to do. We were here to act like demon people, so set us loose. I had a headache and my hands were numb. Looking at the group, it struck me that the casting director was either a frickin' genius or just by dumb luck had netted a particularly gnarly crew of hard-scrabble locals who could have either just risen from the grave or worked at a local gallery. Sean remained his usual cool, unattached self, the slits of his eyes a badge of stoned perfection. Annie's perpetual sneer blunted only slightly by lack of sleep. Even bored, I maintained my very uncool enthusiasm, hyper alert to my visible fantasy of being discovered or for any sign of indicating the film's true meaning. When someone finally came over and herded us all over to the spot where we'd act possessed, I couldn't feel my face. I saw sparkles in the chill air, but I subverted discomfort into method. Demons didn't care about feelings. The scene we were involved in was a chase. Mr. Stockwell was to come running up over the small hill with us zombies lurching behind. I wonder if we had any artistic direction, I mentioned to Sean. Only half kidding. Don't overact, is all he said. That stung. Tubby got me. Moments later, the director yelled at us through a bullhorn.
Demon people, I want you to walk awkwardly over this hill towards the camera. Arms outstretched, stumble a little. You can moan if you like. I want to see some wild eyes and sadness. Look as if you're fighting a battle inside your head. Remember, you've been forced against your will to follow Mr. Stockwell.
This was it. I'd always thought that my most expressive features were my eyes and hands. And now the director was giving me license to use these natural tools to project my newly demonic nature. It was now only a short ramble over this hill towards the future, closer to the truth and my amazing new life in front of the camera. Props people started pumping fake smoke all around us. The instant atmosphere wafting between tombstones, punched trees drifting over the hill. B-movie Nirvana. I could feel the war begin to rage behind my eyes and the terror rise at being taken over by a malevolent force greater than my own. I was no longer in control. My soul was restless and damaged, the horror driving me mad, an itchy combination of claustrophobia and ravenous hunger. I wanted to escape. I needed release from this purgatory, wandering in a void, in search of some peace, in search of redemption, in search of revenge, in search of meat. Annie practiced her arm reach, shoulders slightly askew, with an expressive bulging eye twitch. I turned to Sean and put my hands around his throat, gritting my teeth and snarling. I really wanted to pet his long brown hair and kiss his pretty lips, but I'd settled for strangling. He wasn't Amy's boyfriend after all. The makeup people had applied bits of dark-colored smudge to our faces and hands. Our eyes were accentuated, and I thought that Annie, in another life, could have just as easily been a silent movie star, silent film star as a zombie. Her big watery eyes projected a deep sadness. When she stared wide-eyed at me, her eyes said, "I know you have a crush on Sean, but he's mine."
Action!
The bullhorn echoed over the hill. The bunch of us started moaning and stumbling, lurching and reaching for the limping Mr. Stockwell, who was way ahead of us zombies, easily avoiding us.
And cut!
We were left milling about on the hill between the trees. I had long legs and was standing further down, closer to the camera than my friends. There was a big hippie guy next to me. He stank, had big hands and lots of ratty hair, a beard with twigs and leaves stuck in it.
You in the front, the big guy. I want you to hunch over a bit more, an amble, more like an animal.
The director called out. No direction for me. I was standing right next to him. Hadn't the wide-eyed searchlights of my craven soul, the grasping, groping hands of a young man taken before his time, garnered any notice at all? I had literally thrown my demonic presence at the camera. I could feel the beast within me writhe in fury, my guts in contortions. Stupid director. I wanted to lash out and snatch the pumping heart right out of the guy's chest, gobbling it up in one messy bite. Along with my anger, I felt a momentary wave of pity and compassion for the poor man. He didn't know what he was doing or what unholy forces he had unleashed. He hadn't fully observed my obvious, shivering demonic behavior. He was distracted, dismissive. Was it the big stupid guy next to me who wasn't doing anything, just lumbering down the hill with gravity and control? I resolved that I would just have to turn the volume up a bit. I had an agenda, and I would not be overlooked. The director wanted something more animalistic, a hunched, injured ape. I could do that. I felt the thing inside me instantly transform into a feral, rabid, knuckle-dragging Neanderthal. Prickly hair crawling up my back, the brow over my bloodshot eyes thickening, drool pooling in the back of my throat. Everyone ambled back behind the hill for another take, glancing at the big guy who'd elicited comment from the director. He seemed nonplussed, even irritated. He reeked of alcohol and, what was that, piss?
Action!
The moaning was louder this time. A woman was wailing, pulling her long hair. Wow, people were getting into this. I sent forth a guttural gurgling cry and rolled my eyes back. Wow! My right cement foot dragging behind me. Left arm, a gnarled stump. Grabbing at the air with my right hand. Now a mutated claw. The last two fingers curled under. I shambled down the hill like Igor, even barking a couple of times. A completely over-the-top zombie stereotype.
And cut!
I had made it a bit further down the hill, again, next to the big dumb drunk.
That was good.
Called the director.
Let's do that again, and you in front, the skinny guy with the big curly hair. No barking.
Since I was so far down the hill, it took me a bit longer to get back up. Sean and Annie already mingling with the other zombies. Were they avoiding me? The cold air felt good on my hot face. Perhaps barking wasn't the best idea after all, but it was so convincingly savage and strange was good for a zombie, right? After all, I was no longer human, and the possessed did things differently. This director, disappointedly, knew nothing about demons. Criticism at such an early stage in my new career dug deeper the further up the hill I got. Chagrin was a feeling I'd certainly gotten used to, but this didn't make any sense. Maybe I simply wasn't cut out to be an actor after all. But what would I do? I tried desperately to quiet the familiar despondency, the spiraling apathy that curdled any new ideas. Was I going to be stuck forever as a kitchen drudge in this backwater town while Sean and Annie moved on, escaping the curse? I knew in my heart that I was destined for something better. I wanted to come crashing out of this prison and scream to the world, I am the most convincing zombie! This is a goddamn fucking Academy Award performance! Annie was snickering when I finally skulked up to her and Sean. I've never heard a zombie bark before. That's the whole point, I responded, thinking, what was the point again? Was this about being a zombie, about being possessed, or trying to become something different? And where was the evidence of prevailing doom that I had sensed? Was it right under my nose? I knew that something was going on, but I couldn't quite wrap my head around it. And it, like Dean Stockwell, was just beyond my reach. Not quite visible, but like a siren song, pulling me forward. I had felt compelled. This whole exercise was suddenly tiresome and overwhelming and no longer fun. The high worn off, I was freezing and wanted to go home so I could just go ahead and walk off the cliff and I knew was behind us. I could hear the sea roaring. Action! Called the director. I was a different kind of zombie altogether, and I wasn't acting this time. Walking with a halting, wholly unenthusiastic shuffle, eyes staring coldly ahead. I think I moaned. I know I was gnashing my teeth. And cut! That was great. Let's do this one more time, and I think we got it. The director seemed pleased. As I walked back up the hill for the last time, I reran these last moments along with the other two takes. It was the dead part of this latest performance that had worked. No mention from the director meant it had been successful, and my spirits revived somewhat. Dead was dead after all. I was not supposed to be in control of my own body. This last time, I stayed close to Sean and Annie, who were so completely over it by now that they just walked down the hill as if on a short stroll across town. I put my arms up with a slack-jawed moan, but I was as well ready for this frustrating exercise to end. I longed to retreat to my room where the idea of stardom and barking zombies could exist without criticism. The world I had spun for myself was, so far, so much more satisfying, the subtext of all my fantasies muddling together. I concluded the world and neither of my two friends shared this vision, or just didn't understand. Was I wrong? I would just have to show them. And yes, the scene was cut! Damn it! I've watched that movie over and over. It's coming up. Wait a minute. It's a terrible movie, but it's so much fun to watch just because you recognize the landscape. And I know these people. Wait, there they go. You see them like that, and.
But would you please do the bark? Well, before I read, I would love love for the latecomers to come in and do ignore the please do not sit sign. That's how we roll here. I'm also just gonna have this one moment of being at work. There's this safety pin that's opened and it's been driving. I have to point out one of the latecomers right there is the designer of the book cover.
Oh, I love it.
Carmen Woodson. Hi, Tom.
Hello.
Thanks for holding this. This is Tom, everyone.
So happy. I'm sorry I'm a little late.
You're just in time for the booth. So I have a great story about my book because I want everybody to know that you can do everything wrong and still get a book. I didn't sit down to write a book. I'd actually started doing what I called these baby Facebook essays. One year I needed some creative challenge, and so I was every day for 1 month I will write a mini essay about one friend or one lover and one song. And so that was the conceit. And then around day 15, my friends were like, these are really beautiful, you should expand them. And so I put my little seedlings in the ground and I started trying to flesh them out. And then only a scant 7 years later, I'd sent some out for publishing. I was getting them published individually. And one essay, one of the ones I'm gonna read for you today, about Devo. The editor said, she was like, we love this. And I said, well, I mean, if you love them, I've got a whole book of this stuff. And she was like, we do manuscripts too. You should send us the manuscript. And I got a book. So I'm going to read for you 2 pieces because mine isn't in chapters then. It's kind of these seedlings and they grew into smaller essay vignettes. So I'm going to read the piece that editor accepted, that started the book deal, and then I'm also going to read a piece about Kate Bush. So first of all, show of hands, who does know Devo? Okay, that's a quorum, that's good. Devo made my sister cool. I was 10 when my sister Amber was 16, and forbidden to enter her bedroom, it was an act of bravery and necessity when I'd sneak into her room to listen to Devo's This Is Devo on her record player. What child wouldn't take time out for fun? Be completely entranced by these strange men in their red flower pot hats. Though I wasn't their target audience, I had the most powerful of all forces, a cool older sister. But my sister and I define closeness, as many sisters do, in complicated ways. I could say we are close in that we share a range of comic facial expressions only we find hilarious. We can guess the joke the other one's heading for at any other given moment, when one person's rhythmic tapping on the table is the cue for the other to tap the bass line to oodalolly oodalolly from the Fox Robin Hood. Last month, she texted me a list of complaints my mom made during a trip to Kansas City. I don't like bagels, too doughy. I don't like English muffins, I shouldn't have ordered them. I punctuated the best ones with a volley of laughing cat emojis. I could also say we are not close because of the many ways in which we are different, in all the most stereotypical ways. I left for the city while she stayed in our hometown. She got married and had 2 children. I went to grad school. More painfully, I could say that we are not close because my dad pitted us against each other. And putting me down, mocking my spaciness, was one way to win points with him. Once, when visiting me in Seattle, she saw the book, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, on a friend's bookshelf. Turning to my friend, Amber said casually, "Don't you think that girl is so much like Bryn?" She's a sociopath. One of our greatest bonding experiences was when, drunk on some alcoholic version of a cherry limeade, she confessed to me that at one point Dad had written both of us, the daughters, out of his will. I mean, I could understand you, she said, leaning over the table earnestly. But me? I agreed, solemnly, unsurprised, unhurt. We'd accepted our roles long, long ago. And it is the duty of sisters to recognize they're not your fault. Of course, these differences generate conflicts over the years, and I know I am to blame. Amber would say we are not closer because I am terrible at calling, and I miss all the important life events of our family because I moved away. I send presents late or not at all. We are distant in ways both physical and emotional, and because she is 5 years older, we weren't as intimate as most sisters growing up. The trust just wasn't there. Stay out of my room, she'd order. Stay out of my heart, I think. But grow up together we did. And like catching the flu, influence is often spread just by proximity. There was always music in our house. We all sang, played piano, played flute. My mom would play Berlioz's Dream of a Witch's Sabbath, and I would hide in terror under the table when I was 4. Later, as a teenager, I would listen to the Out of Africa soundtrack with her and know that my mother was lonely. My dad sang too, but silly songs that I thought for years he had made up. Here Comes Peter Cottontail. Bess Parker's Ringle Wrangle, which I realize now would foretell our own angry conflicts after my parents' divorce, when I was asked at 16 to take over as housekeeper and cook. And I'm gonna sing this for you exactly as my father did. Ringle, wrangle, jingle, jangle, got me a horse and a pretty woman's love. I got a dog with the beans and a new pair of jeans, got a woman to cook and wash and things. Amber's musical influence had less to do with emotional connection than with thin walls and a record player. She would dress like Jennifer Beals and flash dance and go to pom-pom practice. I'd sneak in, wearing glasses and my dorky sweater vests, and listen to Asia, to Foreigner, to Taste of Honey's cover of Sukiyaki. But most of all, I listened to Devo. At age 10 in Kansas, what could be stranger, sillier, more fun to dance to, more intriguing? Who were these men? What were men? Were they Devo? If so, and my sister liked them, did she understand them, men, Devo? If she liked them and I liked them, did that mean somehow, on some level, she liked me? I speak of my sister's musical influence as one always does of influence in the past tense. Now she thinks my music is boring. I think hers sucks. As with fashion, Amber likes whatever is new. I search through thrift stores for whatever seems connected to the past or interesting for the future. We have a new card game where she'll play a song I've never heard, and I guess it's Pink every time. I'm always right. I come to terms with the nonstop Mariah Carey Christmas album every holiday season because that's the only time I'm home now. I favor walls of guitar or atmospheric dream pop, which even my young niece, my sister's child, informs me doesn't have much beat. Though we are both strong singers, when I'm home, she always beats me at Guitar Hero or Glee karaoke because I just don't know any of those songs in the required fashion. You have to sing Don't Stop Believing like some character from Glee, and they just don't have an indie version of this game. But this is why I love my sister and why I know we still count for each other. She really loves music. Like really, really loves it. My big sister taught elementary school music for years, and her Christmas programs were so creative and so engaging. Once she put on a Christmas musical called Elvis, complete with an Elvis impersonator elf and hula dancing reindeer. I laughed so hard and so long, my brother-in-law had to nudge me to knock it off. Children follow her around the town like she's some kind of benevolent Pied Piper, waving excitedly at her in the grocery store. Hi, Mrs. Miller. When she quit for upper school administration, she bemoaned the decision over the phone to me. But this new job could be a really good opportunity for you, I told her. No, I want to sing and dance and roll around on the ground like I did in my old job, she said. She loves music. And even if it means a very Celine Dion Christmas, I can appreciate her need for 24-hour sound. The way sometimes music replaces intimacy and gives voice to the things sisters cannot say to one another. A lyrical punchline to a musical joke. And once, there was music we shared. My first taste of cool came from listening to her Devo records, and Devo still captures what's best and what I insist will always be why we're close. Like us, they were funny, they were fun, and they were weird. We are. No deal with God. And I'm gonna sing for you a little bit. I said if I only could, I'd make a deal with God, and I'd get him to swap our places. Be running up that road, be running up that hill, with no problems. I had popcorn cake for my 7th birthday. It was good. Think bundt cake shaped popcorn ball with M&Ms. Popcorn cake, though, is in that category of Midwestern desserts that when you try to make them for coastal potlucks years later, no one can believe you ever ate something so sweet. Jerry Seinfeld puts it another way. Of course, when you're a kid, you can be friends with anybody. Remember when you were a little kid? What was the criteria? Are you in front of my house? You're not an adult? You're my friend. Come jump on my bed, right? And what if you had anything in common at all? You like cherry soda? Oh, I like cherry soda. We'll be best friends. I still do that. I offer my love for a song literally pretty often. Once, a guy drove me into the country and played me Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill while we lay on the car hood, still warm from the drive, under the stars, cool summer breeze blowing over us. Feel that for a minute. It was the first time I'd heard that song. He reached for my hand. If you didn't fall in love then, you are made of stone. Other times, I lose my heart to a sentence a student writes, showing they're moved and changed by something beautiful in the world, or to a sympathetic look somebody gives you at a party. You think, they don't know me at all, they get me. And you trust the world, and it expands like shades of sunrise stretching up and out across the sky. One of my all-time favorite students, the preternaturally wise Nicolene, told me she'd once deeply bonded with a boy over a misread line in The Catcher in the Rye. My own best friend, Dina, and I often end conversations about the universe like this. You know? Yeah, I know. As if tacit understanding is all you ever need. But sometimes it is. When we tell these stories where our hearts fling themselves outward like unattended children, why is the implicit moral, well, don't do that again. Don't mistake intimacy for music. Don't attach too much to intuitive responses. Don't think someone can understand you just because they share your love of truth and beauty, vastness, and the stars. It is true that the running up that hill guy wasn't as spiritual as I'd assumed he was. He just turned out to be a conflicted Christian. And it's also true that the student's beautiful sentence doesn't always bespeak a complex intellect and struggling soul. Sometimes it just means they can't spell. As when a student described an architect as the soul designer, S-O-U-L. And sometimes maybe somebody isn't a very good reader, needing guidance so badly that they will will it up from the page, rearranging letters and altering syntax until a mistake looks like a miracle. But I don't care. I think I can count on one hand, or maybe one finger, the times those connections really weren't worth it. Is it really wisdom to start mistrusting your own deeply felt experiences? Those small and precious offerings, the tiny gestures that reach you, even if that person wasn't reaching out? Are you shallow if you respond equally to deep secrets and popcorn cake? I once told my British Lit class that I had started watching Game of Thrones. Later that week, one of them was talking about Heathcliff or Hareton and how he was both part of the family, but not really part of the family. And I said, so he's a Greyjoy? They erupted in laughter. They erupted in laughter. You guys don't. I swear to God, on all the gods that be, running up and down their hills, our class was even closer, even better, even livelier, just because of that one moment. It led me ultimately to showing them the video of Kate Bush singing Wuthering Heights. The responses were mixed. So this was like a big hit. Like people were like walking around with their boom boxes listening to this. Murdered one kid. That is the whole gypsy chic I'm going for, murmured another. She was in love with this strange and beautiful creature, bending over backwards in unironic interpretive dance, beckoning through her ghost spirit to your willing, waiting heart. When Hounds of Love came out in 1985, Kate Bush wanted to call Running Up That Hill something else. She wanted to call it Deal with God, but her producers worried that others would misinterpret the song and then block it. In a 1992 interview with Radio 1, Bush says what she wanted was to say that really, a man and woman can't understand each other because we are man and woman. And if we could just actually swap each other's roles, if we could actually be in each other's shoes for a while, I think we'd both be very surprised. I don't sound like Cat Bush at all. And I think it would lead to greater understanding. And really the only way I could think of it was, well, you know, you could do the deal with the devil, but I thought, why not do a deal with God? Because that's really so much more powerful. The whole idea of asking God to make a deal with you. So, God stayed in the parenthetical, but for some of us, Kate Bush included, deal with God is the real focus. Not the action of running up a hill when everything is understood, but the gesture that invites in mystery. Even as an atheist, I want this. To embrace misunderstandings that draw us towards each other, the imperfect understandings that keep us vulnerable and ready to connect. This is why I was never punk rock. I just couldn't possess that aggressive certainty, feel anger as liberation, would rather be reeled into wonder than rebel. But I love the Ramones song, but I don't want to be sedated. Not now or ever. I want to be ignited, even by the tiniest of matches. Even if, like Hans Christian Andersen's Little Match Girl, the flames burn out quickly. She is left colder than before and dies when her matches run out. But she sees something that looks like love before she does. I will never run out of matches. I will run up that hill forever, waiting to make a deal. Thank you so much. Okay, so we each get to do one question per for each of us, like as in we ask each other and then we do any questions. So one of the things that I think is interesting about Eric's and my book together, we both end on other people's words, which, you know, like I like to say that my book isn't a memoir, they're just personal essays. But we both give over the last line to some other voice. And I wondered what you think about that. Like, why do you think that's where the book ends for you?
It touches on the through line. I think the deeply mined through line of my book is how important it is to be seen. How important it is to be seen, because there's so much busyness going on. We work so hard in this life to make something of ourselves, and then for somebody else to just sweep away everything, all the hyperbole, all the hard work. And Wade is the one. Wade, my husband over there, he saw me on the dance floor and he goes, "You're glowing, just like you were in class today."
Sexy laugh.
So it's been my struggle to try and get this story out. It was my struggle with my parents, with my family, to be seen, as I was a little bit of a freak for them. I acted out quite a bit. I would turn the volume up and down, and then back up again, and then back down again, trying to, measure. I finally figured out that the editing process is so important in my life as well, is to just stop talking and act like a decent person.
That's beautiful. I end on lyrics, which I think is obvious for my book, and it's I don't love the ending of my book because it could have just kept going, right? Like, I mean, give me a couple weeks, I'll write something about you, right? Like, I could just keep going and going, and I didn't like the way that ultimately this book of love that has so much love in it, and that idea that it's just going to be infinite and you just keep going. I didn't like that I had to kind of end it like with my marriage, like, oh, and now it's over, here's my husband. But we got married because we love music. I mean, really, that's so at the core of who we are, and it just felt right to give those words to somebody else because it is bigger. Yeah.
Well, I don't have so much as a question as a statement, in that in reading your book and hearing you read your book, I feel your book now more than I did, and I love how you've taken music as a theme and imbued it with your own heart and soul, and illustrated it for all of us. What a wonderful, fast way in to really see it and feel it and hear it, but also the performance of it. I understand the lyrics more. I really do. And I am better now than before I sat down. Just a beautiful book. And, I'm taking my time because I'm a slow reader, but I really want to grok this mother.
I finished his book. We'll take questions from the audience now, if there are any.
I have a question.
What's up?
I'm curious because it sounds like whether it's personal essay or memoir, both of you share both your stories, but also other people are woven
Yes.
into those stories. And I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about your ethics as a memoirist in terms of who you write about, how you write about them. Do you talk to, did you talk to people that you wrote about? I'm a writer too, so I'm always curious about how people navigate this kind of the ethics of memoir and personal essay.
Well, I used to teach creative nonfiction at Seattle University, and one of the pieces that I gave them to read was called "Don't Tell Me Anything." Like, and which I loved. It was meant, I think, truthfully. This author was like, "Don't tell me anything because I will use this material." Like, and I thought it was interesting in that, like, because people are like, "Well, wow, yeah, like there are a lot of boyfriends in this book," and I'm like, you know, though, I can't write about people I don't like. I've noticed, like, there's one essay in the book where I just briefly touch on somebody who wasn't a great relationship, but I don't spend much time on him, because what is there to process? You know, like, I know that wasn't good. And so I often don't feel, I mean, it is my hope that, like, somebody would read an essay and go, yeah, that's okay, you know? I'm having trouble writing about my dad because of that, because, I mean, he's dead, so I can't ask, right? Right. But I also think, like, one of the things that I do is, I did learn the hard way. I read one essay about my best friend from high school, and I'm both very bold and completely oblivious to whether people are reading my work or not. Like, yes, I publish it, but I'm like, yeah, probably nobody read that. And then Amy did read that essay. Her name's not Nina, right? She did read it, and it was over. And I was like, I mean, but the essay was about how she had already broken up with me as a best friend, and so I was still trying to grieve that, still trying to process that, but we were nominally still in contact. So then I have an addendum to that essay. I made it longer and longer until it included an apology, basically, for for having the selfishness to kind of try to. And I talked about how I used it as a teaching moment then in my book with my students. I would be like, don't write revenge prose. Like, I was like, you know, do you want to get back at somebody, or do you want somebody to see that you were wronged? And if either of those is your goal, then this is not ready for you to write about. And so, and I still wouldn't say I was that mean. I just think it was a sharp, you know? So that is one thing, but like, I think right now I'm working on a new book about the dealers. Here. And I am asking them. I am asking them. I'm saying directly. I am like, I'm writing a book about the dealers. Will you talk to me? And they're like. So, you know, I mean, I think there's no line. I mean, really, just that emotional line of, again, like, what are you doing, right?
Motivations.
Yeah. Eric?
I had conversations with my two sisters. The two parents are gone. Glibly, I would say, well, they're gone. I can see what the fuck I want.
Right.
So, but it's all good. I spoke to my sisters many times. Oh, Eric, you can't say that. That didn't really happen, did it? You know, remind them, well, lucky me, I am the eldest of the three.
That's what I was thinking.
I had another experience with the parents, and then you guys came along and ruined everything. But I had them before they became restaurant drones. The two sisters were put to work, and that said, I had my very own experience. We all have our very own experiences, and I would recommend writing your own story. It is not just a cathartic experience, it's a life-changing experience. I know myself so much better.
Yeah.
Do I, Wade?
I know you better.
Yeah.
Terrible.
To Bryn's point, it's important to write about all that stuff. All of that stuff does not have to be in a book. It's really important to get it out.
Yeah.
And then take the scalpel and go like this. Kill all the darlings and just get to the nut of what it, get to the point. To your point, Wade, get to the point. There are truths to be told. You have your own, very own version of the story, and that is it. That's all you need to know. One of my favorite authors, Mary Carr, has written an amazing book about the art of memoir, and I went, oh my God, the Bible! Here it is, and she literally tells you, don't mess around. You tell your truth. Who cares? You do what you gotta do, you gotta swim through it, and you tell your story. And she really gave me a lot of ballast there. But my motivation was to give the parents credit for what they did. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, this is more than just a familial fable. This is my very own story to tell. Tiptoed a little bit, and then I went, okay, let's just go. And it's so much fun.
I have to say, like, because people were like, yeah, did you go check back with every ex-boyfriend? And I'm like, no. But yesterday, this is insane. I have to tell you. So, if anybody's read my book, there's an essay about Nicki Minaj. And I've met this guy singing karaoke, and he sung Nicki Minaj, and so then when he told me his name was Nicki, I thought he was just being funny. And then, like, some stuff happened, and years later, I wrote this piece about, I thought that he had given me a fake name, and I, became the worst internet stalker, and I was like, oh my God, he gave me a fake name, and I thought I knew where he worked, and that he did this, and then, years later on Facebook, he came up as a friend, and he had told me his correct name, first of all. And so then I wrote this piece about what an idiot I felt about oh my God, that took me into a dark place, and what is going on with me? And then I wrote him this apology message on Facebook. I mean, I was like, hey, you may not remember me, but I wrote this piece. It's on my blog if you want to read it. And he called me yesterday. Oh my God. And he was like, yeah, it's art. Well done. Oh. Nice. Isn't that funny? It's awesome.
Does anybody else have another question? You can ask anything.
Eric, do you have another book plan?
I do have another book plan. I wanted to do a sequel because many people have asked, what happened to your mom? Stuff happens, and I went with my father, and Ellen, my mother, went out of the picture. There's a whole nother story about Ellen. And the after effects of the restaurant happened, it was birthed, it happened, it exploded, it was over, our version of it. But we all survived handily and made new things and had crazy, wonderful adventures. My brilliant mother became a famous weaver, many things. But I'm also working on a young adult horror